What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Grimlock video. I hope each and every one of you are doing swell. It has been a long time, so I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody's still here playing the game and enjoying themselves. If you guys are, this is going to be my generalized caster guide. As you can see, I'm currently 22, 28 in shuffle. I'm 20, 69 in threes. I haven't queued that many threes. I also haven't queued that many shuffle games, honestly. But either way, yeah, so hopefully this helps each and every one of you reach your goals as you progress throughout the season. It's pretty early in the season still, so we're still learning, gearing, and everything like that. But yeah, this is general caster information to help you guys grow as players. This is going to go over positioning, spell schools, some other things that will help you guys gain rating and hopefully achieve your goals this season. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, also guys, if you have any questions and I don't touch on it in the video, feel free to leave a comment down below, and also make sure you like the video. It helps me grow substantially as a channel, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. I will talk to you guys in a second. Alright, so to show some positioning advice for you guys as casters in general, a lot of times, so this is just like in a grand arena. It's basically the most basic arena you can get. I mean, obviously this is the old version of the grand arena, so it's a little different. These pillars are actually slightly larger, but when the game starts, a lot of people either run to the left or right pillar, place their portals, place their gate, just like I have set up already. And then, you know, the enemy team is relatively doing the same thing. Sometimes what happens is this melee DPS begin to push in on you. When they do push in on you, you want to make sure you rotate out into the middle of the field. You don't want them to push you on your pillar, and you definitely don't want them on top of your circle, your demonic circle. Now, if you're playing something like a Shadow Priest, instead of setting up, you're literally just going to start walking mid-map. There's no reason for you to sit on a pillar as a Shadow Priest, except for you're going to let them get the positioning advantage early on. Same thing with like an Elemental Shaman. Assert your dominance, guys. You want to position either there or like somewhere over here where orange is, you know, somewhere in the middle of the maps here where you can still semi-utilize getting back to a pillar relatively fast, but you don't want to be here in the middle of the pillars or, you know, behind a pillar, because ideally when you get behind a pillar and a melee DPS comes back to you, it's kind of a scary situation. The only nice thing about pulling a melee back to the pillar is a lot of times you're making them line of sight their healer, and there's times and scenarios when that is like a very, very good thing to do, and I can show you that in the next clip. I'm going to show you guys as well when I'm actually fighting a real team. But yeah, so a lot of the times, you know, an enemy healer will be where my friend is over here. This is Xanth, and basically you want to utilize your positioning to where you're either pulling the healer out of position off of the pillar, and then you're able to abuse him. So like if he's where he is right now, I kind of want to be pulling either into this corner or this corner over here, and ideally I want to be line of sighting my circle. So this is probably the ideal position, is like around here, because when I feel pressure, I can just walk a couple feet over here and port back to my circle. I mean, I can even position my circle on this side, and so that when I'm over here, no matter what, I'm going to line of sight my circle because it's on the actual other side of the pillar. But yeah, you want to be in range of your circle, and you want to be playing over here. If you're a Shadow Priest, you just tee off in the middle of the map. Same thing with Elemental Shaman. A Mage can push a little bit more aggressively because they have things like Displacement and Alter Time to bring them back to where they were previously. So you can make plays with those abilities as well. But most of the time, you want to be brawling it out in the middle as a caster. Anytime you're on the pillar or around a pillar, it's kind of sucky for you, because when you're in like on and in a pillar, you're dealing with line of sight problems. A lot of like warriors or rogues can hit you. Like say you're right here, I'm like trying to deal with line of sight here, and a warrior is just peeking, hitting, peeking, hitting, peeking, hitting. A rogue is peeking and hitting, peek, hit, and a lot of times they can just do this over and over again. If they're ever scared, they can just wrap around the pillar, and it's just never good. Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, basically that. You know, as a caster player, you want to be controlling mid-map as much as possible. When the pressure is in your favor, you can start to push onto their pillar. You never want to push too far in, though. And when you do push in, you know, you want to make sure you can get out. So don't be afraid to place like a gate, you know, if you need to. So like when I'm pushing in and I'm out of range of my circle, I never want to place like, I never want to put myself too far to where I can't use any mobility. Sometimes it's easier to just gate like into a corner, or gate into like back here, or gate like even over here, you know, but I never want to gate pretty much on top of my own circle, unless if I just circled, if you know what I'm saying. So, for instance, say I push in over here, I place my gate over there, and then I'm like, okay, I've done enough damage and I've forced my cooldowns and I want to get out because it's their turn now. And then I can gate over here and then they chase me over here. And then I can circle still, and then I'm completely safe because they've utilized their mobility. You know what I mean? You want to be able to utilize your mobility, because a lot of times what people do is they'll gate backwards, but they'll gate to where their circle is, and then when they gate, they're already on top of their circle. So then when the people reconnect, you have to walk away from your circle and then teleport back, which is never really good. And that's just for warlocks, obviously. But you know, in general, casters, you want to be able to move around the map, and you don't want to push too aggressively unless if you have stuff to pull you out. In the same situation, you know what I'm saying? So you'll see a lot of that in this next clip. I hope the clip helps you a lot with positioning as a caster. It really shows how to utilize the space and how to trade mobility with classes like warriors, even demon hunters. It's a very similar situation. You know, if you think about it, a demon hunter has like fell rush, warrior has charge, a demon hunter has vengeful retreat, a warrior has spell reflect, you know, a warrior has intervene, a warrior has heroic leap. So basically, you have to utilize your abilities to create space for you as much as possible. Another thing, too, as a caster, is you want to prevent people from getting to you as soon as possible early on. I will say there's a lot of times where I mount up, I place my stuff, and then I mount up, and I just sit here and just line of sight a warrior over and over and over again, because they haven't utilized their mobility. And I want to get off the pillar as much as possible, because as soon as I can get off the pillar, the faster I'm going to make them bait out a charge. And when they bait out a charge, I can teleport. And then once they get back to me again, I can then just use my gateway across the map, you know. And then they get back to me again, I can Havoc Coil. And then they get back to me again, I can Infernal Stun. And I have a billion things that I can do to peel for myself in between. That isn't fear. And honestly, you can fear Warrior, but it's really rare you're going to get it off. Because again, they have Pummel, Spell Reflect, Stormbolt, Shockwave, and they have Berserker Rage. So you want to be utilizing like immediate things in order to get it off as much as possible. Map. So watch for healer positioning. There's so many healers at like 1800 that will just walk off a pillar and be sitting in the middle of the map here, and they're just going to be sitting here doing free healing to the whole team and not taking any pressure. There's no reason why you shouldn't be either fearing them or tabbing to them and at least putting up a wither so that they feel some immediate pressure. A lot of times I throw up a curse of tongues on them, and just force them back to the pillar. If they don't go back to the pillar, very easy to swap to them and force cooldowns for free. I forced plenty of trinkets just from just a single, like, either fear or coil, just because they're positioned wrong. Whereas if they're back here, you know, if I'm sitting here as a healer and I'm peeking out healing, it is making it incredibly difficult for, you know, a caster to actually land crowd control without having to push in on me, or for the melee DPS that they're playing with to create that situation for them. So yeah, you want to look for those things with your positioning. I hope this next clip helps a bunch. And if you guys have questions about positioning, I can go a little bit more in depth with it. But overall, positioning is adaptive in a game, so it's not something that like you can really go into detail about unless if you're talking about specific comps or a specific class, or also you know, very specific scenarios. It's really easy to VOD review positioning and say, okay, yeah, you positioned wrong here or there, but talking about positioning as an overall is really hard to dial in. So I hope this next video helps you guys a bunch. If it does, let me know in the comments below, and if it doesn't, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I'll see you. Okay, so to talk about positioning, we're gonna look into my positioning on this map. I want to give you guys a pretty solid example here of what I mean. So starting out the gate, so this is obviously Enigma Crucible. There's 4 pillars, sorry, but they're all relatively small. 2 of them are bigger than the other 2, so it's a little weird. Definitely a strange map, but I'm playing Windwalker, Destro versus Fury Warrior Shadow Priest. And I want to give you guys an example of what I mean by good positioning. So obviously I placed my port here, gate, other side of the map. And then when I peek out here, my first globals are going to just be my damage. And I want to just sit mid. You can tell immediately. So I pull away from my port. I sit in the middle. The stun is perfectly fine. And it's not a big deal, right? I just want to sit here for as long as possible and start getting as much pressure as possible off the rip, right? We force the immediate Intim stun, Intim shout, which isn't a big thing. And because he Intim shouts my healer, so one second, I want to show you. See, Intim shouts my healer. You'll see here, right here. He goes to charge, I think, to get this off, because so I like Mortal Coil here. You can see he charges my healer to Intim shout, and then I can port. And when I port, he charges again, And you can see, just because I know he already utilized both of those, I can start pressuring behind the pillar. And he can't stay for a long time because the shaman won't be able to push into me. So that's the type of thing you want to do over and over again to kind of force people to get off of you, because if he stays for too long, my Windwalker can come back and leg sweep him, and it's gonna be an immediate trinket from him, most likely, or else we'll just like insta kill. So this is super important positioning here. It's just trade that mobility, the charge, another charge. Now he doesn't have either charge, and I can just play behind the pillar here and tee off on him as much as I want. Doesn't really matter, which forces him to just get off of me, like I said. And now I can go whatever I want, whenever I want. He kicks me on shadow. It's perfectly fine. I shadow meld, come back in line to my healer. I get bopped. Perfect. We already forced the disperse, which really wasn't too much of me. Obviously, you can see my Windwalker was teeing off, but it was enough of me. So that's all that matters. He's going to go for a fear here in a second. So I port. And so I port, he charges, and now because my healer is in a fear, I want to make sure I stay as close as possible to him as possible, because he went all the way over here. See, if I gate there, I'm going to be, 70 yards away. So I have to be very cautious about where I'm playing at all times. So, Siphene comes out here. He gets silenced. This is a super dangerous moment for me. Definitely scary. I could die, so I end up walling. It's a little bit of a late wall. He doesn't... I am on forbearance for another 4 seconds, so a little scary. But either way, we get it off. I hate playing against Resto Shamans because grounding, but we don't talk about it. I pull him away from my port again. This is the ideal. Again, you want to pull him away from the port. And I also pull him on top of my Windwalker. And the reason why I want to do this is it allows for my Windwalker to peel for me if I need it. Like that. So he rops. So I'm going to play the rop pretty well here. You can see I position myself basically opposite of the rop for the warrior. He's not going to have a great time. Rop falls. I port. And now the warrior has to make the decision to either chase me or the Windwalker. The Windwalker is on his Shadow Priest. And so I can basically just sit back here and pretend to cast and do whatever the heck I want. So my Windwalker clashes him. Double sweep, which is really nice. I get 2 huge Chaos Bolts off, which is nice and fat like that. So we force leap here, which is also huge. And I'm taking the D right now, but I get lay on hands, which is perfectly fine. I place gate and port. So this is what I mean by like adaptively placing gate. I don't have port to actually utilize my gate where it is right now. But because I'm super scared of this next go here, I have to kind of get out. So you can see I get really low here, super scared. And a stun, I get lay on hands, boom, full health, which is nice. And I place a gate because my healer gets horrified here, and I know he's probably going to run for a fear or a silence. Yep, so that follows through. But now I've made the position where the warrior is now out of mobility again, which is super nice because, like I said, where we were here. Sorry, not to bring it back too far, but where I was here when he does that, he leaps in to get on top of me here, and then he's gonna Stormbolt and do his damage. So because he used leap there, I could pretty much freely use my gate, which is really nice because now he can't leap after me. And now he's forced to swap. So he swaps to my Windwalker Monk, and now I sit mid-map, sit line of sight of my port. The second he charges me, I port again, and now he's back to not having any mobility to catch up. He finally gets to me with a charge, and then I Havoc bolt him right here. And now he's going to have to use another gap closer to get close to me again. Or he won't be able to get close to me at all. As you can see here, he finally does get back. And when he gets back, he gets disarmed. So just utilizing this over and over again, just based on positioning here, you can see how screwed over the Fury Warrior kind of gets. I'm going for free cast fears. I get kicked on fear intentionally so that I can cast off my damage. I get a full fear on the shaman here, which is huge. Utilize the ROP. You can see this is pretty nasty too. So off the disarm here, my Windwalker says he's going to ROP me. So I just sit here and just tee off. And while I'm getting teed off this stun, he ROPs him. And I sit on the opposite side of the ROP. Every single time the warrior wants to come back in line to me, I can just chill. I'm going to push in here because I feel like we have an immense amount of pressure, and there's no reason not to. Get a half fear off the Hodge. And we're doing ridiculous damage here. I mean, everything is just kind of dying. That was a really good half rep too. Para and a half rep. So yeah. And then now that our go is over, I can go back and port. My healer gets caught in a full fear when he pushes in to get the rep, which is fine. It doesn't really matter. We have the pressure here. So that fear is relatively useless. He should have probably double feared me in myth, but instead he fears my healer in myth. But yeah, so either way, I start to rotate back to my port, and I port when I can and just sit line of sight. Now, the reason why I port and sit line of sight, so this is something that I see a lot of Warlocks mess up, is when they port like versus a warrior, they'll they'll port like boom, like this, and then they'll immediately come back in line of sight. And when they come back in line of sight, you're just giving the warrior line of sight to charge you. Instead, I just sit here and I just line of sight the warrior this whole time. My healer's in CC. I make a new gateway so that I can utilize that in 2 seconds when the warrior reconnects to me again, most likely. But you can see he's just going my healer, so then I can come out, make some pressure happen. And yeah, as you can see, I just randomly dropped to like 50% health because the warrior finally touches me. And still doing a decent amount of damage here. As you can see, I'm doing more damage than the warrior. I port when he uses his charge again. So I pull myself as far away as possible. Again, like I said, you know, you can just see he leaped off of this route right here. He charges. When he charges, I port. And now the warrior's stuck in no man's land again. And I still have a gateway. So when the warrior reconnects to me, technically I could gate. But that's entirely up to the warrior player, right? If he wants to actually utilize it. As you can see, my Windwalker robs the charge, which is disgusting. Really solid play by Myth there. And yeah, utilize that as much as possible. Double sweep. He trinkets that. I'm just casting as much damage as I want. This is kind of a scary moment here. As you can see, like not a lot going on. I do get, so yep, right there. I pull myself to the middle of the map. So I'm taking a lot of damage. My healer doesn't actually have a lot other than bubble, and I don't really have a lot either. So I want to pull myself to the middle. I port off cooldown, and then I want to get away as far as possible. So I instant place gate, and I gate his leap. And so now I am max range from the warrior, and the warrior has nothing to get to me because he had already used his charge and leap. And now he's just sitting there. Now he charges again, and again, we double coil. So every single time we have something for him, he gets dispelled out of it that time, which is a little scary. But you can see I'm coming up on my what's it called, circle. I already have teleport back again, and because he kicked me on shadow, I'm able to just free cast bolts in his face, which probably is a terrible feeling for him. I stun the spirit link. For some reason my add-on's not working where I can't like see the spirit link there. He charges. I should gate here. I should port. Yep, port here. Perfect. And then I just line of sight the warrior, letting Myth kind of do what he wants. Sit here. I think I call for my healer to hodge the warrior here in a second because of his positioning. You see how I pull him really far here? I could just tee off on him as much as possible. So that's huge, you know. That forces a lot of damage. You could actually see he drops to 0%. I wonder what his health actually hit. Let's see. So, like, this is insane. This is a crazy amount of damage on this guy. Right there. He's at 121,000 health. So just based on positioning there, you know, pulling the warrior behind the pillar and utilizing that as much as possible. He gets a double fear, which was actually what saved his life there, which is crazy good play by him. Huge heads up play by him. But he finally connects again. He blade storms. I'm waiting out the grounding. I could probably kill that, honestly. And then I get a double coil on this charge. He trinkets or gets dispelled. I go for... what's it called? I go for an infernal stun on the dispel, but I think he gets like knocked or something. So he gets out of the infernal stun, which is fine. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, but now I have the ROP to play around, so I'm just playing around the ROP here. And when the warrior finally reconnects or is about to, I port and force him on my Windwalker again, and I just sit here and just tee off again. And again, I have another gateway to use, so technically I could replace gate right here and gate away from the warrior again and make that gap again. So pretty disgusting, you know, overall, but they're super scared, so I could just sit in mid-map and just tee off. But yeah, you can see how important positioning actually is when it comes to the longevity of the game. And I'm still able to compete with damage the whole time as a Destruction Warlock. Like, Destruction Warlock currently doesn't actually need to get that many Chaos Bolt casts off, and I could actually be doing more damage if I was better at utilizing Rain of Fires, but I'm still able to compete in damage, and the whole time I'm just kiting the warrior around the map. So pretty disgusting game, just to show off how good positioning can really win you a game. Alrighty, the next thing I want to talk about in the caster guide is spell schools. This is super important for every caster to learn. They all have multiple spell schools. Now, some things are a little gimmicky, some things don't have as many spell schools as others, but some things don't deserve as many spell schools as others. So getting into it, we have Devastation Evoker. Devastation Evoker has Spell Frost, which falls under their Azure Strike, their Disintegrate, and maybe like Null Shroud. I think if you get locked on Null Shroud, it locks Arcane, which locks Spell Frost for some reason. But yeah, outside of that, that's your main source of damage is your Spell Frost. So you want to make sure when you're getting locked out, you're not getting locked out on Spell Frost if possible. But luckily for Devastation Evoker, they have 2 other spell schools, which include Fire and Nature. Now, Fire is your Living Flame and your Fire Breath. Technically, I think like Deep Breath falls under this, but you're never. I don't even know if it does, because I think Deep Breath is technically its own unique school, so you can get kicked on like fire, and it's technically like volcanic, so it's like black magic and fire magic, so you can still Deep Breath even if you get kicked on fire, I'm pretty sure. And then you have nature, so if you're locked out of everything, you have sleepwalk, which sleepwalk is super good, especially because sleepwalk in this season, they removed the cooldown from it naturally. They gave the passive of Dreamwalker just to baseline, which is really huge for Devastation Evoker. It's also huge for just all evokers in general. But yeah, you have 3 spell schools. So I guess theoretically, Augmentation has 3. Augmentation, instead of fire, they just have volcanic, so like eruption and upheaval fall under volcanic, and it's basically the same thing. If you get locked out on volcanic, you get locked out of fire spells, which is your fire breath, but you can still cast Azure Strike, which is frost, and then you can, or spell frost, sorry, and then you can also cast sleepwalk, which is nature. So ideally, what my main goal is here, and you can see in that positioning video that you guys just saw, is when you're trying to get pressure out, a lot of times you want to bait people into kicking, especially if you're struggling with fake casting. So you're a newer player and you don't know how to fake cast, or you're just really bad at it. Sometimes it's better to just start spam casting like your crowd control, and it baits out kicks on your crowd control, and then you can cast your damage. So for instance, like with Devastation Evoker, if I'm struggling to get off Disintegrates for some reason, it's literally the easiest button in the game to press, but if for some reason you're struggling to get off Disintegrates, or at least full term Disintegrates, you can just start spam casting Sleepwalks, because they have to kick the Sleepwalk. If they let the Sleepwalk land, you're able to cast Disintegrate anyway, so they have to kick the Sleepwalk, and it allows you to Disintegrate freely. If they let the Sleepwalk go, you're still able to cast Disintegrate freely, because now they can't kick you because they're in a Sleepwalk. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Moving on to Warlock, we have 4 different spell schools as Warlock, which is Fire, Shadow, Shadow Flame, and Chaos. Now, as silly as this sounds, Destruction has 3 of the spell schools, while Demonology and Affliction get screwed with 2 spell schools, but that's fine. They don't deserve them anyways. No, just kidding. But yeah, Destruction has Fire, it has Shadow Flame, and it has Chaos, which is super nice. Just to give you an example, so things like Incinerate. Oh, sorry, it has it actually has 4, so it has all of them. But you can't get locked out on Shadow Flame as a Destruction Warlock, because your only Shadow Flame spell is actually Shadow Burn. So if you get kicked on Shadow, which is like Fear for Destruction Warlock, you can still cast Incinerate, and you can still cast Chaos, which is your Chaos Bolt. But if you get locked out on, say, Incinerate, which is your Fire, you can still cast Fear. And if you get locked out on Incinerate, you can still cast Chaos. If you get locked out on Chaos, you can't cast anything. So you never want to get locked out on Chaos Bolt if possible. It happens all the time, though. Chaos Bolt is the one like big, oh no, I can't do anything. So you'll see as Destruction Warlock, I'm casting a lot of Fears, because if the Fear lands, I'm able to cast a Chaos Bolt. If they kick the Fear, I'm able to cast a Chaos Bolt. And that's the idea, is you want to be able to bait them into that pathing where they have to kick the Fear or else you land a Chaos Bolt, or they have to kick the Chaos Bolt and you can freely Fear, etc., or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Basically, you don't want to get kicked on Chaos, ideally. But yeah, you have different spell schools to negate that. Oh, and Demonology, just to give you an idea, Demonology has Shadow, which is like their Shadow Bolt and Fear, but Hand of Gul'dan falls under Shadow Flame. So to kick them on Shadow Flame, you want to be kicking Hand of Gul'dan, which locks them out of everything. If you kick them on, say, Shadow Bolt, they're still able to cast Hand of Gul'dan. So ideal kick for a Demonology Warlock is either on Fear or on Hand of Gul'dan. So basically treat Hand of Gul'dan as if it's like a Chaos Bolt, even though it's not. But just for all intensive purposes, makes it easy, just kick Hand of Gul'dan. Because if you kick Shadow Bolt, then they, like I said, they can freely cast Hand of Gul'dan. And then if you're going to Affliction Warlock, they also have multiple spell schools. They have Shadow Flame and Shadow. So if you cast Shadow Bolt, you get kicked on Shadow Bolt. Say you get kicked on Haunt, because Haunt is Shadow as well. You can actually still cast Malefic Rapture. Malefic Rapture is Shadow Flame. So a lot of the times, if I have dots rolling and I'm trying to build pressure, I'll just start spam casting Shadow Bolt, because Shadow Bolt does actually a lot of damage. But if you kick me on Shadow Bolt, I can just freely cast Malefic Raptures, and Malefic Raptures do a lot of damage. A lot of damage. So yeah, That's how you want to play. You want to basically bait people into kicking the things you don't actually care about. You intentionally get kicked on the wrong school, and then you're able to abuse that. And it goes against them too. So, for instance, if you're playing against a Warlock, and they're playing, if they're playing, what's it called? Grimoire Sacrifice. And if you want to be able to free cast, you can actually kick them on Shadow. And if you kick them on Shadow, you're able to free cast because they can't lock you out because their spell lock is a Shadow spell. So that's if they're playing Hand of Sacrifice or Grimoire Sacrifice. Now, if they're not playing Grimoire Sacrifice, they're going to have a pet, and the pet is going to be able to kick no matter what, which is why I personally don't like playing Sacrifice. Now, same goes for like Frost or like Mage in general. If you kick them on Polymorph, or any arcane school, they're not able to counterspell because counterspell is an arcane spell. So for instance, if I'm like a destruction warlock and I'm fighting a mage and they go to cast a polymorph, I'm going to kick them on the polymorph, and then I can freely cast chaos bolts. The only way they're going to stop it is to either like blink through me and line of sight me, or they're going to blink and like dragon's breath me into like a ring of frost. They can ring of frost freely. But yeah, there's ways to avoid getting kicked very easily versus other spell schools. Same thing with shaman. Wind shear is actually a nature spell. So if you lock them out on like a hex or a lightning bolt, they can't kick you. Which is really nice. So yeah, moving on to Shadow Priest, we have Shadow Frost technically, and Holy. Now Shadow Frost is a technically because no Shadow Priest really plays Mind Spike right now, but Mind Spike is a spell in the game, and Mind Spike is technically Shadow Frost. But when you get kicked on Shadow as a Shadow Priest, you're just immediately going to start spamming Flash Heal because Flash Heal is a huge heal, and it also, well, not a huge heal, but it's a heal nonetheless, and it gives you 10% damage reduction passively for 10 seconds or something like that, which is really nice. So basically you get kicked on Shadow, you press Flash Heal, you press Desperate Prayer if you need to, but yeah, realistically, you should be able to live the spell lockout, and then you can just go back to casting Shadow spells and just doing a million DPS, which is really nice. But yeah, you have 2 spell schools. Technically, you have 3 if you play Mind Spike, but nobody plays Mind Spike. And same thing, if you're playing Mind Spike, you want to be using things like, Void Torrent, and you want to be utilizing like Vampiric Touch a lot, because if you get kicked on Shadow, then you can just spam Mind Spike. Just saying. But no, I don't think Mind Spike is good right now. Just putting that out there. And then now we're moving on to Shaman. We have Fire, Frost, and Nature, which is, Fire is obviously our Lava Burst, our Flame Shock. Frost is our things like Frost Shock, Ice Fury, which you're never going to get kicked on Frost as a Shaman, so you'll always be able to cast Frost spells no matter what. So if I see you Shamans getting kicked and then getting kicked again, and you're not doing anything during those globals that you're locked out, you're not playing the game right. You should be casting at least Frost Shock during those globals because, we parse. And then Nature is things like Hex, and Lightning Bolt. You get locked out on those, you can freely cast your Flame Shocks and your Lava Burst. So, you want to trade your spell schools like that. Mage, you have Frost, Fire, which is a specific hero talent tree, and then Fire and Arcane. So just like anything, less so now than before, because I don't see people playing Ring of Fire anymore. I don't know if Ring of Fire is locked to Fire spec or what now, but used to be played a lot, but I haven't seen it. I don't play Mage, so I don't really know. But if you get kicked on Frost as a Frost Mage, you can spam cast Polymorph till the cows come home, and vice versa. If you get kicked on Poly, you can spam cast Frost. Ideally, if you get kicked on Frost, you want to be shimmering away and polymorphing in order to live until Ice Block. Weirdly enough, if you get kicked on Frost in Cold Snap, it resets the cooldown, which technically resets the kick, and you're able to Ice Block. So if you get counterspelled on Frost and you Cold Snap, you can immediately Ice Block. So just to put that out there. It wastes your second block most of the times, but it can save your life. So that's something super important. Fire Mage is a little different. Fire Mage, you have 3 spell schools all the time. You have Fireball, Pyroblast, Fire Blast, Blast Wave. You have all those things. And then on top of that, you have Ring of Frost, which is your 1 Frost spell. Technically you have Frost Nova. And then also you have Polymorph and Counterspell. So all that. So, and then Arcane. Arcane's the most limited because I don't think they actually get like any fire spells besides Fire Blast. I think you can Fire Blast, but you can cast Arcane spells. You get locked out on Arcane. You can still cast Ring of Frost, which is really good. So yeah, you have multiple spell schools. So utilize your multiple spell schools, guys, is what I'm saying. And then going on to Balance Druid as a caster, we have Nature, we have Arcane, and Astral. So Astral is unique. You're never going to get locked down on Astral unless if they add a cast time to Star Surge, which they have previously in the past, like a long time ago. But Astral is your Star Surge, so you can freely cast Starfire, which is Arcane. You can freely cast Cyclone and Wrath, which is Nature. So if I'm casting, say, Starfire, and I get locked on a Starfire, which is the worst thing you can kick on a Boomy. Do not lock out Starfire. There's no reason to. You can lock out Starfire. You can freely cast Cyclone. You can freely cast Wrath, and you can freely cast your Star Surge, which is really nice. Now, if you go to cast Starfire, you get locked out. Say you cast a clone and they kick you on clone, and then you start casting Starfire and they kick you on Starfire. You can still press Star Surge, which is really nice. So Balance Druid is very strong because pretty much any spell school you lock out doesn't feel good to lock them out on. I mean, the best case scenario is you lock them on Cyclone and then they have to press Starfire or Star Surge. But either way, Star Surge hits like a truck. So yeah, that's where Balance Druid lies. But yeah, everybody has multiple spell schools, so utilize them, guys. I see a lot of people just get kicked and they're just sitting there doing nothing. There is a reason why we have multiple spell schools. Utilize them. You can see in a lot of my content, a lot of my clips, I get kicked on one thing, I'm immediately casting another, or I'm kiting and porting or utilizing something else. Going back to mages getting kicked on frost and cold snapping and being able to block. Warlocks also. Am I logged into a Warlock? I am. If you have Impish Instincts, if you get kicked on Shadow, usually you can't teleport, but because you have Impish Instincts, if you get kicked and Impish Instincts procs, it actually resets the kick duration of just your port, and you're able to port while locked on Shadow. That's how that works. I don't know why, but it is how it works. So if you get kicked on, say, a Fear, and you get hit by a melee, it'll reset the kick and you're able to port. Not reset the kick in fully, like you can't just do anything, but it will reset the kick on your port, so you're able to still teleport, which is really good. So that's why I use Impish Instincts almost every game now. But yeah, just another thing to put out there. But yeah, utilize your spell schools. That's a super important thing. And then moving on to the next topic. Okay, so for the next segment of the video for caster guide, I want to explain a very important thing for basically all casters. The only caster that can kind of get away with not doing this is, I guess, Shadow Priest, but because they don't have a spammable crowd control outside of mind control. But this is what I call defensive crowd controlling or peeling in general. So this is something you really want to look for. You have to be super hyper aware of what the enemy is doing. And I'll show you an example of it in this clip here. So you can see we're doing damage here, but I can tell they're going to go for a go. My Windwalker doesn't have Trinket. Super scary. He does have Karma and Diffuse up, but the Warlock presses Nether Ward to prevent me from fearing or coiling him, and then the Rogue also presses Cloak on their damage. So there's pretty much nothing I can do here, so I'm just going for damage on the Priest a little bit, and then off the Nether Ward I immediately fear into a Shadow Fury, and the Shadow Fury catches the Dispel of the Fear. So that whole go goes without my Windwalker having to press Karma. He probably didn't even need to press Diffuse, but he presses Diffuse anyways, which is fine. But yeah, so I'm able to peel the whole go just in like 2 casts. And then now we regain pressure. I get a double coil, and the game goes on from there. But yeah, those types of things you want to look for immediately just as they come up. You know, you see cooldowns rotating back up on the enemy team. You want to be able to pay attention to them. It happens a couple times in this game. For instance, let's see here, right here actually. So you can see we're a little scared. We're really scared. My Windwalker is like 1 health. He has no Karma. He does have Wall, but and my healer's in 1 second crowd control, but he comes out of crowd control. He's fine. I go for another Ward on myself here, and Infernal Stun the Warlock. Off the Infernal Stun, I look to fear the Warlock here. I fear him on his Chaos Bolt cast, and then I restart casting a fear immediately, so I catch him on the Dispel. And then now the Warlock is peeled immediately. I go for a fear on the Rogue, and there's no worry anymore, you know, and now I can double coil, boom, and we're big chilling. But those types of defensive crowd control lineups, just to prevent big damage from coming out, sometimes you don't even need to go for, you know, a spell lock on a Chaos Bolt, because a lot of times your fear is faster than a Chaos Bolt. So and the risk of proccing a precog on like a Destruction Warlock is really scary. So you just want to look for things like that as the game progresses, and it allows your team to save cooldowns and allows for you to maintain pressure. So yeah, defensively fearing is more important in my opinion than the next topic, which is offensively crowd controlling. But you can do this on pretty much any caster. I mean, if it's a a druid, it's even better because you hit cyclone and it's not dispellable, so you can defensively cyclone all game if you want. The only thing is with like a warlock, for instance, is I can fear, and it puts people in positions and it manipulates them. So the nice part about fear is it kind of maneuvers people around, whereas like things like polymorph or even sleepwalk, it's like so slow. It keeps them relatively stationary, so you can't really abuse that too much, but at least for defensively peeling, it's really, really nice. So you can like double fear. A lot of times I suggest casting fear, and versus higher up teams, you just want to immediately start casting another fear, because if they get dispelled, you're just going to boom, immediately hit them with a second fear, and there's just nothing they can do about it. A lot of healers at a higher rating, literally within a second to 2 seconds off of a fear, if they're in a global, the next global is a dispel. So, you just want to be able to line up fear into fear, or, fear into fear on another target. You also have to be mindful about when they dispel, so like if I fear 1 DPS and it's full and they get dispelled and then I half fear them, I can freely full fear the other DPS, and I don't have to worry about recasting a fear because they have no outs. They have no dispel for that second full fear, and then I can re-fear off of that as well. So you have to pay attention to your damage, or your DRs, your diminishing returns. So as you can see, like in this screen cap, the Warlock is on a quarter DR fear, Rogue has a half DR fear, so I can still fear the Rogue and it get decent amount of utility out of it, but ideally I want to remain 12 seconds not fearing the Warlock again, because I don't want to DR it further than it's already DR'd. You know what I mean? The only time you're going to go for a quarter fear is if you know for a fact it's going to either save you from dying or guarantee you get a kill, but it's really rare you want to go for a quarter fear, unless if like it's free and you're fearing into fear. But quarter DRs are like really like gimmicky, and a lot of times it just pushes the DR tracker back. So a lot of times I suggest going for like fear into fear, and maybe you can go for a quarter fear, but a lot of times it just elongates the length of time your diminishing return takes to come back. So yeah, defensively fearing, defensively polymorphing, defensively everything is really good. Also elemental shamans kind of struggle with this a little bit, but they have a lot of utility to back it up. So like, because you can't double hex, you have grounding or wind shear is a lower cooldown. You also have static totem to move people around. You also have thunderstorm, which is an insane knockback. You have lightning lasso, which is a great stun. So they have a lot of utility to back up the fact that they can't fear into fear, or like hex into hex, or poly into poly, etc. But you can still, you can hex, and the nice part about hex is it's a curse, it's not magic. So like for instance, a priest, they can't dispel it. So if I were to hex the destruction warlock, it would always be full, and it would always be undispellable. So he either has to sit it fully, or he has to trinket, or it has to break, which is really nice. So that's something to think about too. But yeah, every caster kind of has their way to defensively peel. Please utilize it. It is super, super hyper important to you staying alive, and it's insanely good at keeping your teammates' cooldowns still available, and elongating the game for you. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is offensively CCing, which is the opposite of what we were just doing, which was peeling. This is basically setting up our crowd control in order to set up for a kill. So this is super important as any caster. Pretty much all casters have a form of crowd control, and you want to utilize it. Now there's different ways you can utilize it. Sometimes you utilize it to set up for a kill. Other times you use it mid kill, and it generates more pressure. I always say like a full fear landed at half health. So say like I land a full fear on a healer while their teammate is at half health is far more valuable than landing a full fear at full health and then doing my damage to get somebody down to half health. It makes people, it's just more pressure basically. But you can see in this clip here, we're actually losing this game substantially. This is a really hard game. I get a full fear here, but just off the rip here, I mean, we're just getting dumpstered on. He reflects a coil on me, super bad for me. Like, I just played this so poorly. Full fear. I get full feared into like an axe toss, half fear here, into like an axe toss off. This guy was just dumpstering on me basically this whole time, which is crazy. So it's wild to think that we win this, and you can see in a second why. So one, we already forced the Iron Bark, which is huge. The only thing he has left now at this point is actually Warlock Wall. I land a full fear here on a Cyclone cast, and look at how much pressure we generate off this full fear here. I land 2 Chaos Bolts, and boom, it's over. He gets a full Hodge, and because I land a full fear and he doesn't have Trinket, it's just like over immediately from that point. One full fear into a full Hodge in 6 seconds, you can take somebody to 100-0 if they don't have any cooldowns. Now, of course, I will say this Warlock should have walled when I went for a full fear here, like boom, full fear, this should immediately be a wall by this Warlock in my opinion. But he does get kicked, I will say, and he dies in the kick. So that is pretty unfortunate. But the second I land a full fear here, he should be pressing wall. Instead, he goes for like a fear cast, and on his fear cast, he gets kicked. Boom, right that. And in that lockout, he actually dies 100-0. Boom, boom, boom. And you can see just how fast just one small error the enemy team makes just drastically changes the pace of the game. I mean, you go 0 to 100. Of course, the priest also could have life swapped. He didn't expect the warlock to take 10 million health in literally 5 seconds, but it happens, you know. And it is what it is. So either way, you know, we get a full Hodge and then into a half fear just to kind of show that like there's even more crowd control to be dealt. And this is just one case of how strong offensive crowd control can be. You know, and the thing is like a mage, even in this situation, can go for a Ring of Frost. You know, like if I Ring of Frost a druid here in the starting room, even if I Ring of Frost around him and I blink and blast wave him into the starting room and into the Ring of Frost, like this game is over at that point. You know, as long as the same situation happens where he goes for a fear and gets locked out on the fear. But yeah, it's just that like those micro things like that when you're playing aggressively matter so much. I will say probably the better play here, just to nitpick myself a little bit, is when I push up here. When I get this full fear, as this fear is ending, so I go for a Chaos Bolt and another Chaos Bolt, and right here, I go for a Wither cast for some reason, and then a Shadow Burn. If instead of going for a Wither Shadow Burn, if I fear the priest here, and my healer Hodges the healer, there's actually 0 chance that Warlock lives. Whereas there's a chance that the Warlock actually lives here with a life swap. But yeah, they're sometimes, like, you know, obviously the micro, it doesn't matter, but if you really want to nitpick like a play like that, there's always things you can do better, even on wins. So super important to watch over your gameplay, because, you know, even though that win was like, oh yeah, this is great, who's to say, you know, the next time we fight this team, we don't just get absolutely stomped by them because, you know, we don't make the same play or they don't make the same error, right? So, you know, that can happen. You know what I mean? I mean, that was in the first minute, and both the healer and the Warlock had already trinketed. That's never a good sign. You know, you never want to have 2 players already down on trinkets in the first minute. That's like really bad. But yeah, that's a good example of offensive crowd control. And then next we are going to move into the importance of a good damage rotation. Alrighty, moving on to my last subject I'm going to talk about caster guide, is definitely do not undermine the importance of a good, solid damage rotation. There's a lot of situations in World of Warcraft where, you know, you're either being targeted heavily as a caster, or you are just like having to turret as a caster and help your teammate as much as possible and see how much damage you can do in that single moment so that you can force them defensively, etc. You know what I mean? So realistically, you want to be either hitting a training dummy or in a queue and queuing as much as possible, even if it's just battlegrounds, you know, random battlegrounds or a skirmish or anything like that in your free time. Or if you don't have a lot of free time, you just want to log in, hit a training dummy for 10 minutes and then log out. It's, in my opinion, hitting and practicing your damage rotation is like the same thing as playing like an FPS game and practicing your aim. It's super important to get, you know, comfortable with how your abilities feel, comfortable with what to do first beforehand, and set up your ability. So like for a Destruction Warlock, for example, I know I want to spread my Wither to every target possible and then Malevolence. I see a lot of Destruction Warlocks press Malevolence and then Wither. Terrible. If you don't have Wither active already, there's no reason to Malevolence. I mean, there is a reason, but you get so much higher value out of having like Wither on multiple targets and then Malevolancing, and then, you know, building on your stacks. I see a lot of people Malevolence and then press Wither, and then they have to build up their stacks, and then they don't get as much value out of their Malevolence, you know, and that happens a lot. But yeah, there's like other situations, you know, for like for instance, a Frost Mage right now, you want to be able to get comfortable with using Frostfire Bolt and just like positioning yourself in the way where you can actually spam out Frostfire Bolt after Frostfire Bolt after Frostfire Bolt, or like line up your damage with Ice Walls and etc. You know, a great person to watch right now is Calvish. He's absolutely disgusting on Frost Mage. Like, he's disgusting on Fire Mage too. He's just a nasty player, but like watching him play, you know, you'll learn a lot of like little tips and tricks like that. But every one of the caster specs has like a very solid damage rotation. You have to get that down, whether you're being trained or not. I mean, you all have options. There's no like excuse for you to do like 150k DPS when you can literally just press wither on like 3 targets and that just do it passively for you. You know, you just have to be able to be comfortable with using your buttons and being trained at the same time. You know, as a destruction warlock, a lot of people have this conception that in order to do damage, I have to be able to get chaos bolts off. And as good as Chaos Bolt is, and as how scary as Chaos Bolt is, it's not actually that important. I find more value in withering multiple targets and being able to proc my Blackened Soul as much as possible. I mean, there's games where my Blackened Soul is double the damage of my Chaos Bolt at the end of a game. And like that amount of pressure that builds is like super, super high importance, you know? So for basically any caster though out there, you know, you'll find these little niche things about your class by just practicing your damage rotation over and over again. And it's super important to do that. I mean, like I said, just hit a training dummy in between queues and get more comfortable with your abilities. I mean, the amount of times, you know, you step onto a new class, for instance, imagine how you felt when you stepped onto a new class for the first time. And you're like, what do my buttons do? And like, yeah, you slowly get more and more comfortable with them. But realistically, are you as comfortable with them as you should be? Probably not. And at the end of the day, like, you know, almost every player could practice a damage rotation. I'd say the only player that's probably mastered like their raw damage rotation is like Trill or something, who's like a world first raider, you know. And even then, you know, his damage isn't perfect. He does a lot of damage, don't get me wrong, but like everybody has, you know, skips, and there's like things like, you know, who expects to get cheap shot stunned on a Chaos Bolt when you're supposed to get it off or something like that, you know what I mean? So there's always things that can interrupt you and prevent your damage, but you should be practicing your damage as much as possible and practice the optimal amount of damage. Another example for instance, for a Destruction Warlock, I want to make sure I can get off as much damage in my coil as possible. And I don't do this really well right now, but I know with time I will, because I'll be practicing it. And the thing that I want to do is like, when I coil, sometimes if I like, say I Havoc coil, sometimes I press like a Wither or a Conflagrate into a Chaos Bolt. Those are just wasted globals. Ideally, every single coil, I should be getting off 2 to 3 Chaos Bolts, which equates to anywhere from like, let's see, if a Chaos Bolt does 2.8 mil, to one target, I'm splitting that between 2 targets. That should be like 15 mil damage in one mortal coil, because it's split between 2 targets, obviously. You know, if I'm able to get off that type of damage, there's like a drastic difference in me getting off 1 Chaos Bolt in mortal coil window, because I conflagrated and withered or something like that. You know what I mean? So for instance, like, instead of having to press Malevolence or summon Infernal while I'm coiling, I'll do that stuff beforehand. So like, I'll press my Withers beforehand. I'll set up my Havoc early, because you can Havoc beforehand. And then I'll press Infernal, Malevolence, press my Conflagrates, and then Mortal Coil into my Chaos Bolts, right? And now I get 2 Chaos Bolts off because I don't have the proc. But, you know, like 2 Chaos Bolts into 1 coil instead of 1 Chaos Bolt in the coil is way higher value, infinitely. So at the end of the day, you want to just practice getting comfortable with your kill windows and your rotation. Super important. Super underplayed. Like, a lot of people don't even think about it, and they just go in and they're like, oh, you know, I'm doing as much damage as possible. And it's like, no, you're really not. So yeah, definitely practice your damage rotations. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this helps you guys. If you guys have any questions, again, this is like an overall general caster guide. This doesn't really like contain any raw information. This is at a very general level. If you want me to get it like a step higher, I can go there. We can also VOD review some of my games. We can go over that stuff, but that's stuff for another day, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.
This is the future.